OEE by itself isn't worth a dime. So why do we keep trying to improve it? And when you're doing an analysis, be ready to be really critical on any savings you see for improved machine effectiveness. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And today's video is about how much does OEE increase get our company? Are there savings? Is there money involved? Well, there is, but overall equipment effectiveness is not the end-all and make-all improvement that we need to do in all of our factories. See, often what I hear is your OEEs should be 80 or 85%. That's world-class. We get there, you make money. Well, I don't really agree with that statement. To begin with, putting a number on the OEE of any line, it should be done with a historical context, but also, when does OEE actually make you money? I mean, if your machines are performing more effective, that doesn't mean that they're generating more money. For that, you need to be selling product at a good margin. And that's where which parts of saving can OEE generate comes in. So let's dive into the details of OEE, because there is a difference in which categories of machine time loss are we going to improve, and also where can we find our savings. And let's start with, well, let's say the basic one. This is always a bit of a contentious one, and it's labor. So basically sending people home. That's where the real contentious part comes in. But when we spend less time on a line making the same amount of product, we also have less time of our operators standing on that line, and that means fewer costs. So for this, it's important to note we have a whole bunch of OEE time losses. Usually it's depicted like when is the factory closed, when are we in routine type of maintenance, cleaning, breakdowns and stops and speed losses, and the lowest category is usually how much of the produced product was not up to quality standards. So you have a whole bunch of categories, and where we fit labor into the picture is almost at the top. When the line is closed and we know it in advance, we also do not plan our operators to work on it. So any time, including cleaning or a breakdown, we need those operators to be on the line working. But if we improve our OEE, so all those machine time losses, so much that we basically get spare time, so we don't have to plan in this line as much anymore, then we can convert that to labor savings. Now, of course, your organization has to allow for this as well. If you are running at almost full capacity and you then save a couple of percentages of OEE, in practice, it's often not possible to actually get those labor savings. In fact, any OEE improvement of just a few percent will usually not result in actual labor savings. And that is because the OEE itself doesn't save you the money, but paying less to your labor pool is the money saver here, if at least you get the same number of good products. So before you effectualize a reduction in staffing costs and labor costs, you haven't saved anything with a higher total OEE. The other side of this, and this is actually usually where the big money is when you can sell more product. So when you actually need the capacity of your lines to produce more product, you can spread your fixed cost over a bigger number of products, over a bigger amount of sales. And that's very nice. And here also a nice, well, important mathematical thingy. And that is, in this example, we have an OEE of 40%. Let's say that we improve by 20%. So we end up with 60% OEE. How much more capacity does this line get? And it's not 20%. When the 60 is compared to the 40, we get 150%. So that's half again as much production as we had before. These sort of OEE improvements can really increase the capacity, so the amount of product that this line can produce. Now, if there is a market for that, you get basically the contribution margin or your sales margin. This is when you take your sales price, and within big organizations, this is usually the out of factory price, an internal recalculation, but there is a sales price either to the market or to your internal corporation market minus the variable costs of this product. So materials, almost always variable cost. And the labor pool depends a bit on how you're organized. It's not always as flexible as you might think, but basically all the really variable costs and what you sell your product for, the difference between those, that is your margin, your sales or your contribution margin. Because when you make more product with the same machine, the same building, the same management team, because yes, those are pretty fixed as well, you cannot really change them from day to day, what you will see is that you have more volume to make money and get over all of that overhead, fixed cost, write-offs. So you have a lot of investment costs in most factories that you need to pay them anyway. You need to repay the loans. You have amortization on almost every production equipment, building, everything that you own to make your product. And when you have more production, this is the part you really save. Usually, the most money is in extending your capacity and serving more markets, getting more product out of the door. Let's say the big scenario of this might also be that you were actually planning to open a new line, open a new factory, because there is market demand and you cannot satisfy it with your current lines. In that case, when you increase capacity, you also delay investments. And this is a big, big thing for companies because you don't have to spend cash on huge investments and risks that they get also for your organization. Anytime that an organization spends a lot of money to make a new factory, buy a new line, you are also committing a lot of cash and therefore taking a lot of risk that you will be able to market the volume, the production of these new pieces of equipment, of these new investments for quite a long time. So if you can manage to increase your machine effectiveness and also use it to serve the market, then you've got a gold mine. And then indeed, OEE is worth a lot of money. If it's only about labor, usually it will not be the biggest thing in your loss budget, but there can definitely be savings there, especially if we are talking about such big increases. If your machine is not really working effectively most of the time, you unfortunately also have a lot of people not effectively contributing to your production and to your profit a lot of the time. And that will not make you competitive in the market. Now, the third thing I put a bit in the middle is disruptions in your production, in the flow of your production. And you get these not with the top categories. Because if you know that you are closed or you know in advance that you will be cleaning, this you can take into account with your planning. Even there can be some things, startup, cool down, stuff that disrupts your production. But the things that really, really destroy your productive flow are breakdowns, short stops, short last-minute non-supply things, but basically breakdowns and unplanned stops. They are not a problem for many lines. So if your product is pretty stable, your machine stops, basically you have a time loss, but there's not a really big problem. But when your product is very time sensitive, and this can be because there is some enzymatic process going on, or because the heat is very important, and when it cools down, you cannot use it anymore. Or when there is a breakdown, it's no longer aseptic. So any product that is in the line at that moment must be thrown away. These type of products and these type of processes that cannot handle disruptions without serious losses, they will have specifically for those unplanned disruption categories in your OEE breakdown a very big cost. And for such type of processes, always try to go from a breakdown type of stop into a plannable type of stop, like preventive maintenance or better cleaning or better maintenance, so that you make sure that you do not get these very costly disruptions, but that you can handle these things in a planned fashion, so that your line is empty when you know that you are going to stop for a while. This is not for all industries, but for many lines, when you are sensitive to disruption, there is a serious cost involved for those unplanned breakdown type of stops. That I would also say, and it will come up usually in your material loss analysis, but this is really an OEE cost. So the cost of breakdown on your material and quality yield, that is a direct cost that you can always save on. Even when you're not cashing in your OEE points by reducing your labor or increasing capacity and therefore volume and margin, removing disruptions from processes that are sensitive to it, it generates a lot of money. And an OEE point here is worth a lot more than the OEE points for that same process higher up in the hierarchy. And this is also why when we do OEE analyses for processes that have this enzymatic, time, heat, whatever sensitivity to disruptions, it's very important to make the full breakdown and to split out these costs. So there you have it. When can OEE improvement really be cashed for good savings or extra sales? If you have a disruption sensitive process, always be looking into improving those unplanned stops. When you know that there is market demand and you want to increase your capacity, always look for OEE improvements on those lines that are used up to capacity, because generating the extra volume can help you to serve those markets, even if it's not every week of the year. When you are just looking for the labor losses, know that you need pretty big OEE improvements to really be able to cash on this. So as soon as somebody tells you that you always need to be improving OEE, and the only thing that they say that it will improve is every OEE point is worth so many dollars, euros, become very careful. They might be referring to the theoretical reduce in labor costs, but this one is harder to put into practice. It can of course be done, and then yes, you will need to do this to stay competitive in the market, but when those two are not really there, OEE becomes a less valuable performance indicator to improve on. Now I hope you liked this explanation of how to convert OEE into savings. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, let me know in the comments what you think are the great benefits of improving OEE and maybe where I missed a nice savings category. But for now, I wish you the best of luck improving and analyzing your OEE, and as always, also enjoy that improvement journey.